at the end. Okay, good evening. Apologize for being on a little bit of a delay. We're jumping from one meeting to the next. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Lee County Board of Commissioners' second meeting in October. It's hard to believe, this month is flying by. At this time, calling Commissioner Sharp for a moment of silence and the pledge, please.
Everyone will stand, please. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, are there any additions to the agenda? Okay. Is there a motion?
Would you approve?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, approval of consent agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Any public comments, Ms. Parrish? No, okay, all right, thank you. Okay, whole business, update and discussion on the sports complex. Dr. Compton.
Yes, ma'am. Hard to believe, but the 2020 election is almost 12 months away. And so with a light agenda, I decided to put the sports complex and the library classroom and the classroom facility at Central Carolina Community College on the agenda so that we could discuss where we're going to be going with this. And so the first up is the sports complex. I included in the agenda the last plan that was developed by the city and the county and SASL. Also had at the last meeting of the committee that is looking into the sports complex and the library, they had recommended that we update that plan since it was done in 2015. The cost for that plan was about $52,000. I just had a hard time recommending to the Board of Commissioners that they spend $52,000 to update a plan that the three parties have already spent about $70,000 on. So just decided to leave it as is and put that back before the board. But need to discuss with the board issues going forward. If the board wants to move forward with a bond referendum on the sports complex, we need to go ahead and proceed with securing options on the property that this would entail, and also begin working with bond counsel to set up a calendar to get this on the ballot, and also discuss with Sassel, since they would be the main tenant of the complex, begin negotiations with them on making sure that this is, somewhere they would like to, play their games going forward. So, a lot to discuss and get input from the board on where we go with this.
Okay. Discussion?
Didn't Kerry just open up a part 2?
There.
I don't think they opened up a new park, and they passed a bond to improve their parks. But I don't think they've opened up a new sports complex. But yes, there are facilities like this in many communities.
I don't know if it's Cary, I think it's in Wake County, they have a proposal for a sports complex.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, 1.2 billion was the last number I heard in Wake County on the Cary, southern end of Cary.
What was the projected cost of ours? 20?
Well, if it was all done, including the baseball fields and the rectangle fields, was around 25 million. And I'm, just from where I'm sitting and discussing, baseball, the real need in this county is the rectangle fields. We have a best baseball complex out at Tramway where we already play tournaments. Plus you have Northview and now Broadway, who are back in the baseball business, and I'm just not hearing as much of a need for additional baseball facilities at this point. The real need is, regulation-sized soccer fields, football fields, and lacrosse fields.
Possibly maybe future rugby fields.
Yeah.
Same thing, right? They use the same fields.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I can add that I do know that it is on the STIP for the planning of connecting Broadway Road with 421 on that property that's
Correct.
projected.
So you'd have a cut through.
Yeah, there'd be
where
a,
you'd go from Broadway Road and you'd come out over at the 421-87 intersection, over near the Honda
yeah.
dealership. Behind Lowe's, back in there. So just to remind everybody, how we got started on this was, I think all of us just in our day-to-day coming and going, grocery stores, church, ball fields, whatever. There are a lot of our families with children from the age of 5 to 18 that, feel like we need more recreational space. A lot of those families also participate in programs, Sassel being and that's the Sanford Area Soccer League, I'm using the acronym. But, a lot of those families have to travel a great distance to participate in tournaments and that kind of thing. And as a former parent of a traveling athlete, we constantly heard about how Lee County would be a great place to, as well, we use the well-centered, the location for the state of being a great location. At the same time, we were made aware of the property owner's willingness to donate a substantial amount of that property to the county to do a sports complex. So that's sort of what got the wheels turning, and the city and the county put in money to do this study with Brailsford and Dunleavy, if I said that correctly,
Yes.
out of Georgia, and Sanford Area Soccer League, to give them credit, also put in $10,000, if I remember correctly, towards that study, which was a substantial investment for that group of parents and young people, and showed how committed they were and how much they recognized the need. And we're talking about thousands of kids really over time that go through SASL, and it's a well-done program. And the study was comprehensive. Again, if you haven't looked at it in your agenda, they did multiple types of surveys. They went out to the soccer games, to our gymnastics facility where all the kids were doing gymnastics. They went to the baseball fields. They went to the football fields. They really, hands-on, as they didn't just call a random few people. They had lots of input, and then they also talked to community groups, business groups, that kind of thing. So that's where the data came from. Again, it was, I thought, a really comprehensive study. So it's one of those things where, as I've told people that are really excited about the possibility for this, I feel like this is more of a bond issue project, because it's really more of a want than a need. We, as elected officials, we need the public, if we feel like as a board we need to move forward and approach this and put it on the ballot as a bond referendum. We need to decide that and then let the voters tell us if they want to do this or not.
Would it cost a substantial amount if we planned on reducing the ball fields, per se, the baseball fields, the diamonds?
Well, I think phase one was like 18 million in the plan. So, our recommendation would be 22 million on that first phase. Take the baseball fields out. I think another thing to remember is that, you're talking a year out again, and then if the bond were to pass, you'd have to hire a, designer, go through the design and then bid. And so it's liable to change again. So there's plenty of time. You can also borrow the money in phases. You don't have to borrow it all at one time. We seem to get very excited when we borrow money and want to borrow it all at one time, but it doesn't hurt to borrow money in bond referendums, especially for parks, to spread it out. But if you borrowed all 22 million at one time, the tax equivalent is 2 to 2.5 pennies. So, and as we get closer to the borrowing, to the referendum, we can, firm up that number. But at the current interest rates are low, and it is a good time to borrow.
What was the total, I'm sorry, go ahead.
With the bond referendum, the public has to know the potential for tax increase.
That's right, and that's why another reason you would want the vote. However, we do have a lot of growth going on, and if everything that hits the tax books it should, it could cover the entire amount, but not allowed to sell a bond that way.
Now, what was the total of the sports complex, not including the library?
The sports complex itself was, if you did everything, was 25 million. And then if you add what we would think is an inflation factor, that would bring it closer to 30.
And then for the library and...
We're trying to keep the library
So-
under 30 million. You're building 2 libraries and the early
Yeah.
college building, which is 12 classrooms. It may end up being 14, but
Aren't you putting that as a one referendum? Or two different?
Separate.
it's it'd be 2 different
I would say
bonds. One is Parks and Rec and the other one is education.
But what
Library.
we had discussed before, and we need to talk about tonight again, is, I feel like, and this is just my personal opinion, is, we don't need to do a bond for the Lee Early College and the library, because those are not wants, they're needs. you know, we need to have the Lee Early College in a brick and mortar building. They've proved that they're better than a pilot program. You know, they are our third high school, you know. So they need a brick and mortar building, and our library and the college's library both need
I
to
don't
be
know
replaced.
why that's two different libraries, why that's not one library. Why do you have to separate the two?
What are we separating? I thought it was
It
going
is
to
a
be.
combined
It is.
library.
So why are we calling it 1 and 2? That's my,
Because the college, because of the things they do, they have their own section. And then the things that we do, we'll have our own section, but then you have a combined space where you have a shared space. So they have shared circulations, they have shared computers, they do some sharing, but
Same as Chatham County
yes.
in Pittsburgh.
'Cause
Except what they learned in Pittsburgh is they need a little bit more separation, especially when the, you know, youth are
Little
involved.
kids.
Yes.
And Ms. List is here from the library, she can correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know, in reading the information, our county library files things still on the Dewey Decimal System, maybe, and then the college library uses a different type of system. And the same way, is it with the list? No. There's another system that you have different from each other.
Actually,
Is it
the-
Cardinal and?
The integrated library system,
Right.
we use two separate
Right,
systems, right?
And so, you know, it wouldn't be that we could just squish them all together, and they do have to operate independently from one another for that reason. We're
Some
not-
things they operate together, some things
Yeah.
they'll have to operate apart.
Yeah. So that was, you know, and in talking to the manager, that's one of the things, you know, I feel like, and also talking to people, I mean, just full disclosure, I mean, I'm on the library board. You know, the library is concerned, you know, I mean, when you have a bond, there's no guarantee it's gonna pass, you know, but we need to have a bigger, more improved library. Same with the college, you know, I've talked to the president, I've talked to board of trustee members, I've talked to staff, and again, they say, you know, we need a new library, you know, and with the accreditation, you know, that's gonna become an issue. So, you know, I've talked with the manager, I think we could figure out how to pay for those two projects and then put the want as a bond referendum item, just,
I certainly want to support the Lee Early College and the library. I'm not on board with the sports complex. I know all of us recognize we're going to be looking at a couple of schools
Yeah.
in the next 5 years.
yeah.
And I don't mind having these discussions if we're going to bring forth the way we're going to pay for them in advance. Let's talk about how you get there as opposed to planning on doing it based on what the public might decide. But the schools are going to be a must just based on what we already have in place. I suspect, what is it, a K through 12, K through 5,
Mhm.
and middle school probably. But one thing I want to ask about the sports complex, because so many have popped up, baseball diamond down in Fayetteville seems to be doing really, really well. And the proposed $1 billion complex in Wake County. I noticed in this proposal, this consultant looked at Kannapolis and Matthew, which are both pretty small areas. We have any idea how well they're doing with their athletic?
Not this year, I don't, but we can find out easily.
Well, I certainly like to know
Okay.
how that investment's paying out. I mean, they did Wilmington and Mecklenburg. Well, I don't want to compete with Mecklenburg by any means, or Wilmington.
Or Wilmington either.
Yeah, but I'd like to know how the other two are faring since they, I
That's a
guess,
good one.
built their projects. But I think we're gonna have our hands full that's with education and economic development over the next few years.
I mean, I think if you look at the needs of the community for Square compared to what we want or would like are two different things.
Yeah, I agree.
That's why I said, you know.
I agree.
I'm uncomfortable with the library and the early college being a bond
I'm
issue.
sorry, I'm still in the sports complex.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Like you said, that wasn't a want. I'm talking
Right,
about the
right.
sport complex of what we'd like to see and what are
Right.
the needs of the community are two different things in my book too. I don't think you have to go that big, you know, to satisfy the local needs.
But I think what Dr. Crumpton and the staff are looking for is just, you know, do we move forward on this as a bond referendum? And we'll, you know, we can decide that at the next meeting. But I mean, is there any more information that you'd like to have to help you make that decision? We'll get that information.
We do have a financial plan that we can furnish the board that shows the impact.
Okay.
We also,
Right.
you know, can show what we're projecting, at least from a tax-based standpoint, what could happen. So,
They can ask also what their needs are,
yes.
Mhm.
their true needs.
They'll be glad to do that.
Thank you.
Anything else to help with the decision?
No, that's quite enough.
Okay, so we'll move, you know, we've kind of gone back and forth, but moving on into a little bit more discussion on the library and the classroom facility.
This is a interesting project because you have multiple boards involved. You have the Library Advisory Board, you have the Board of Education, you have the Community College Board of Trustees, and the County Commissioners. So you have 4 boards working together on one project, so it's been interesting. We've had a couple of meetings that the community college has orchestrated and developed kind of like scope of programming type stuff using their architect that they use. So it's, we're trying not to spend any money in developing these things because once the board makes a decision that we're going to move forward with this project, whether it be bond or whether it's by limited obligation bond, the next thing you have to do is have to do the RFQ for the architect or RFQs for design build or construction manager at risk kind of thing. So you have to decide what you're going to do there, and that's the next big decision for really 3 of the 4 boards to decide how we're going to move forward there. So
For the early college,
yes, sir.
that does so well, are we limiting their ability to expand?
Well, one of the things that we talked about at the last meeting was making sure that all 3 phases of the building could be expanded. The original site, which was right across from the high school, although from a site perspective, as people are driving by, it would be a better site, it would landlock us so that the facilities could not be expanded. So we considered moving the facilities over to a site that's near the new health building, so that they would, place it in a place where they could expand in the future.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on that? Or things you need, so that maybe we can hopefully make a decision. Well, we'll actually have to make a decision really by next meeting.
Only if you're going
If
to
you're
do
gonna do a
a
bond,
bond
right.
referendum, because then we've got to get, the bond attorney working on a calendar, and
Yeah.
we really, no matter which way you're going, Lisa and I are going to have to do an advance meeting with the LGC at some point, tell them what we're thinking,
Right.
make sure they're not surprised by what we bring down the pike. But they know a growing county is going to have to do more projects, and Mr. Reeves is right. If you look at, if the city approves the residential project on Colon Road, that's, 1,000 homes, and there's a projection, maybe around 2,000 kids for school. And then you do an algorithm and you think about what Deep River Forest would, I think Deep River Forest is just waiting for that first residential project to take off, and then they've got another 2,800 homes that they could put on their property on Deep River. So the projection is, anywhere from 2 to 5 schools when those are built out in 5 to 10 years.
Okay.
And schools is our responsibility. Our responsibility.
City don't want to help with those.
I've asked. I've asked. They've very politely declined.
There is legislation that would allow them to now, but
Yep.
I don't think they.
Some areas do.
Pardon?
Did you tell us some areas
Yeah.
do?
Yep, you have
Help.
some city schools.
Columbus.
No, well, but the cities are not participating in the funding yet.
Says it's all
Yes,
school.
Just
that
in
bill
name
that
only?
bill that passed really was, I think, Monroe, Cary, Morrisville had interest in that. So a local bill became a statewide bill. It just said, if a city wants to help fund a public school system, they can help. And I'm not aware that any do.
Okay, is there any other information you need where the library and the Lee Early College are concerned for next meeting? Okay. Okay, moving on to item C under old business is the resolution requesting the General Assembly adopt legislation for concealed carry. And I'm going to call on Dr. Connect for this.
I think this is something we discussed last time we were here. I just want to thank Chairman Dalrymple for getting that worked up real quick for us. And getting it before us again, we've made some modifications to it just to kind of illustrate what other states are doing. And that, this is not in of itself, all by itself. And this is just for review, discuss, and for future action.
So just for information only tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because you may want to make some changes or.
Any comments or discussion?
Madam Chair, I took and added to it, and I'll go ahead and read those additional.
Okay.
It says, resolution requesting that the North Carolina General Assembly adopt legislation allowing concealed carry on state-funded colleges, universities, and in state buildings. Whereas mass murderers target victims where they are least protected, be they schools, colleges, universities, and other venues that restrict concealed carry handgun holders. And whereas the states of Arkansas, Colorado, Georgia, Idaho, Kansas, Mississippi, Oregon, Texas, Utah, and Wisconsin now have provisions allowing the carrying of concealed weapons on public post-secondary campuses. Whereas the states of Arizona, Arkansas, Florida, Idaho, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Nevada, New Hampshire, which allows in the state Senate, New Mexico, Oregon, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, which does not allow firearms carried in the Senate gallery, Washington, Wisconsin, and Wyoming, and whereas North Carolina General Statute 14409.40 preempts local regulation of firearms except for the authority delegates to local government to prohibit possession of firearms in public-owned buildings on the grounds or parking areas of those buildings or in public parks and recreation areas, and whereas North Carolina General Statute 153A-129 delegates specific authority to counties related to firearms, including regulations of firearms on public property, and whereas Lee County government modified an ordinance related to concealed carry which was previously adopted under the authority of North Carolina General Statute 153A-129 to permit concealed carry on certain county properties to go into effect on November 1, 2019, and whereas North Carolina General Statutes 14269.4 prohibits possessions of weapons on certain state properties, whereas 14269.4 is inconsistent with the broader authority delegated to local government specifically allowing for possession of firearms on public property. Now therefore be it resolved by the Lee County Board of County Commissioners that, 1, the Lee County Board of County Commissioners requests the General Assembly adopt legislation permitting concealed carry of firearms by lawfully permitted citizens at state-funded colleges, universities, and in state legislative buildings. And 2, the county clerk is directed to forward copies of this resolution to Senator Jim Burgeon and Representative John Sauls.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments?
Are you going to send this to them, or have you already done it? as a
No,
draft?
this was just,
No,
for-
this is for information. I mean, if there's a motion, we can vote on it tonight, or we can, Dr. Connect said, you know, it was just for us to look over and consider next time. It's-
I'm fine, but I still prefer we send it as a draft to the delegation.
I just wanted to make sure that you didn't want to make any changes prior to sending it.
I understand.
That's all.
Did you
I
you want the
understand.
draft
You still
to
want the
be
draft
sent
set?
before a vote?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay,
Move to approve sending the draft
okay,
to our legislators.
okay. Any questions or discussions on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, new business. None tonight. Managers report. Ms. Mentor? Good evening.
Good evening. You have before you the monthly financial report for September 2019. If you'll remember that sales tax runs 3 months behind, so we eventually do catch up. But sales tax and property taxes right now are running about 0.49% behind the same period last year, which again is just timing. In reviewing expenditures, this percentage used target is 25%. As usual, many of our departments look over that because of the encumbrances. I have done analysis and backed out encumbrances through, and only 2 departments are over at this point, and that's strategic services, and that's due to the insurances and maintenance contracts that were paid in July, and registered deeds is over due to purchase of equipment and the payments for insurances and other maintenance contracts they have. So, and those departments will continue to level out as the year progresses. Any questions on that portion? If not, you also have the first month's sales tax collection for the year. And if you look at the historical analysis of sales tax, I tried to adjust the schedule to make it a little bit easier to read. So what you'll see is the current 3 months of the first quarter, and then we'll move and I'll adjust and only show the current quarters, individual months there, so it's a little bit easier to read. Overall, we're showing about 8.2% growth compared to last year for the same time. And countywide, I apologize, the schedule did not make it in. We're looking at about 9.4% countywide, so we're starting off with a bang. I will forewarn you, though, we will get hit pretty heavily in 1 month because we filed a large sales tax refund report this year. So when that gets processed, due to the construction projects we've had ongoing, it will have a large impact in a few months to one of our sales tax refunds. Okay?
Okay,
Thank
that's
you.
great news, though. Thank you. Dr. Crumpton?
Yes, ma'am, I have a short report. The courthouse renovations are ongoing. The engineers were here on October 14th, really to evaluate the buildings from a demolition standpoint, you know, what needed to be taken out. So those 2 buildings they looked at were the historic courthouse and the fireplace building. I expect, those construction documents to be ready before the end of the year, and we are beginning the Phase 2 design as well for the district attorney, not the district attorney, the clerk of the court and the courtrooms. So we're trying to coordinate Phase 2 with the renovations of the government center here, so we can bid them at the same time and do a borrowing for those two projects. The Parks and Recreation plans have gone to the state for review. So as soon as those permits are released back, we should be out to bid within 30 to 45 days. And hopefully construction will begin, weather permitting, sometime by the end of this year or into next year, and be ready. Some of the projects would be ready by the middle of summer. So the legislature is still in session. They took 10 days off and are back together today. So a couple bills, Senate Bill 681, local sales tax flexibility, still being discussed, as is the alignment of boards of education and community college school calendars. I think the Fiber NC Act passed, so I had that in my report, but I was reading something about that. I think that had gone through before they went on their 10-day hiatus. So it still is mainly geared towards the Tier 1 counties, but it does offer some hope for Tier 2 counties of getting some funding to help with broadband out in the rural areas. Saga meeting tomorrow night, for those of you who are going. 5 o'clock start, and then the Veterans Luncheon on November 7th, if you would like to attend. They moved it from a breakfast to a luncheon based on the request of the veterans, who we thought liked the breakfast, but they said they would prefer a lunch instead, so they didn't have to get up so early. And so we've moved it to a luncheon at the Civic Center on the 7th. And if you would like to go, let me know, or Jennifer know, and we'll add you to the list for Debbie Davidson's group. That's my report.
Okay, thank you. Okay, commissioners' comments. Commissioner Reeves?
I just got a couple of things. One, I want to commend Hyatt and Associates for the job they did at the Wicker School, especially that auditorium. I'm really amazed. I was telling the manager, last time I was on that stage, I was receiving my diploma. Principal said, "Boy, I never thought you'd make it." But I did. So here I am. The other thing I want to request or mention for the Saga Board in the Economic Development area, when a plant locates here and lists the number of proposed jobs, is it possible for us to know exactly what type of jobs they're going to be and training that people will need? Because the public doesn't have a clue, and the sooner they know, the sooner they can start preparing for some of those positions. Otherwise, they may get left out of the loop altogether.
Yeah, and
It's
that's
on their
something we talked
NC
about.
disclosure for the JDIG, so we do have that information.
Well, that ought to be a part of our.
But to your point, that's something that we need to get out to the public.
Sure.
Because CCCC works so hard to create those training programs, but we need to do all we can to make sure that the public's aware that they're there for them.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Yeah, going back to our earlier meeting prior to here, the airport overlay situation, I just want to encourage all my colleagues, to encourage the board and staff. We got to get that right. There's a lot of concern with that situation, and I know if I had 200 acres out there and they told me I couldn't build but one house every 5 acres, I'd be very irritated. So I just want to encourage everybody, let's try to get that right.
Well, that's part of what we were talking about tonight, is to make sure that you may have 200 acres, but it all may not be usable property.
True.
And we might as well break that out now so that a person understands.
Where their potential is.
That's correct. That's correct. That's why that incremental 54321 is important.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm good, thank you.
Madam Chair, I did send out everyone notes on the TARPO board. The key thing that we need to know is, yes, Deep River Road will be repaved by the end of this year.
Do we have an update on, since Commissioner Del Palazzo is not here, on the Highway 42 bridge? How is that?
It's
going?
under a new contract.
It's under new
That's all I know
contract,
about it.
50% complete, that's all.
Okay,
It's
50%, well,
complete.
okay, that's better
Better.
than it has been, yeah, we're moving in the right direction finally, okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. It has been a really, really busy couple of weeks in the county. It kind of goes to Mr. Reeves and Dr. Crumpton's point of growth and positive things happening. We had we hosted the Energizing Rural NC Conference a couple of weeks ago and had a couple of hundred folks from across the state, and that went really well. And got a lot of great feedback and letters from EDPNC and some of the participants. Very complimentary of our county, and we did the right thing with the Civic Center because they loved it, and they're trying to figure out other things that they can host here because it's such a central location. I attended the Triangle J Summit for our region in Chatham County a few days ago, and again that was well attended. Had a lot of regional discussions, which with Chatham Park and potential with the mega site. Again, being prepared for growth on a regional scale is important, and we've got to have more conversations on that. A couple more quick things. We had the quilt show this weekend, which is kind of unusual, but it's at the Civic Center, and I think I can't remember which year, and I know it's at least 7 or 8 years, and I meet people there from Maryland, Pennsylvania, Georgia, South Carolina, that drive to Lee County for that quilt show. It is amazing what those ladies do. So very well attended, and more compliments on the Civic Center in our area. And the last thing, and I'll leave them here if you guys want to look at them after the meeting. But at the last meeting, I got the letters, and Debbie's had to leave, but I got 42 letters from people that use our enrichment center. And they wrote handwritten letters of appreciation for the enrichment center and what they do. So they're a lot of fun to read, and just they're here if you want to read them. So lots of really good things happening, and I appreciate everybody's input and hard work on that. At this time, is there a motion for the closed session?
Before you have the
Oh,
motion,
sure.
will you make sure that we got somebody to check on those facilities down in Kannapolis?
Yes, yes, I've got a minute. Yes, sir. Thank you. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, per general statute 143-318.1A3, to consult with attorney regarding the matter of Lee County, North Carolina versus AmerisourceBergen Drug Corporation in reference to national drug prescription opiate litigation.
Okay, any discussion or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're now in closed session. Thank you very much. With a short break.